So last week I caught a cold and I was really bored and I decided to rewatch Friends, and I hadn't done that in a really long time, like since I was 16. Back in the day, Friends used to be my comfort show and I would like watch it over and over whenever I felt bad or whatever. And I used to really like it. But then I watched it last week thinking I could get that familiar feeling again, but I've completely grown out of it and it was just unenjoyable for me. So I'm going to talk about why it was so unenjoyable for me. It's just been on my mind. It's been so prominently on my mind that I felt like I needed to make an entire video, and I've never done this before, so that's how important it is to me. Um, so to get into it, I feel like before we tackle why I don't like it, we need to understand why people like it so much because it's very popular, and I think it's one of those shows that's um, carried out into the world. It's like a global favorite. And I think that's really interesting because I think that's why people like there are reasons to why people from different countries like it. And I think those are a lot of them are like double-edged swords where they're also the reasons why I didn't like it. So to sum up why I think it's so popular, I think it's just mindless. It's 20 minutes of nothing. It's 20 minutes of no real life issues, and that's why a lot of us watch sitcoms, right? We just want to get away and like relax for 20 minutes, and I understand that. But and a lot of shows do this, obviously. A lot of comedies do this, but it's just too much. It's like too mindless. There's just no content there, and I think that's what made me hate it so much. And I'm gonna get into it. So another reason I think, which is this is the what I just explained, the mindless thing is an umbrella to why to everything else I'm going to say. But something people from countries outside of the U.S. or like non-English speaking countries enjoy about it is that it's very simple. Both the comedy is incredibly simple, in my opinion, and the language is quite simple. I know a lot of people who watch Friends to improve their English. When they're just learning English. And I understand that. It's all very simple. But at the same time, the comedy, the dialogue, the characters, the plot are incredibly dumbed down and that to a point where it's annoying to watch, I feel like. And I'm gonna get into that. So the whole no real life challenges thing that can be enjoyable for many, I guess. It's like a ignorance is bliss type of deal. You see a lot of people, even to this day, make jokes about how it's super unrealistic. Like these people are living in New York. Yeah, we never see any of them go to work, and like they're always just hanging out. How are they affording this? That's like the tip of the iceberg. I feel like the entire show has the ultimate, you know, um, plan to never have to struggle with any real life challenges, whether it's financial, whether it's identity crisis, whether it's mental disorders. Nothing ever gets resolved, and it's insane. um it's just insane. All these characters have specific character traits that sort of, first of all, super bland, and the ones that aren't that bland, we never see anyone work through any of it. Let's take, for example, I feel like the most troubled child of the show, Phoebe. She comes from a very, very rough childhood, and we see her come into contact with different people from her past, like her sister, her birth mom. She meets her dad who abandoned her, and it's so quickly resolved. We never see her actually face these issues, which I understand it's supposed to be a comedy, but it's just such a dark thing that we're rolling past, and it's insane to me. And on that Phoebe thing, we Phoebe is actually my least favorite character. I've always disliked Phoebe, and I never understood why, because she's a crowd favorite. I know a lot of people who love Phoebe, and I think they like it because she has this like child-like view on the world. Like her POV is very childish, and that can be sweet, I guess. That can be interesting. It's like the Cat Valentine of Friends. Um, but if you actually like isolate her from everyone else, and especially if you remove the fucking laugh track, you notice that she's actually like she's going through a lot. She has all these weird, quirky visions, like child visions of like rainbows, and like she sees everything in this funny lens and all that. And then she has these strange, strong microaggressions that to me just scream like this isn't okay. And we constantly see other characters react to it. So other people are noticing it. That's also another thing. The show is incredibly non-self-aware, yet we see characters notice other characters going through unhealthy behaviors and they just don't do anything about it. I think something I really liked about the show when I was a kid was how, like, flowy it was, how everything was nice and the relationships were so sweet and familiar and cozy. Yet looking back at it, it's just very toxic. For example, Rachel has she's very into herself. She's incredibly self-centered. And a good example of this is when she's flirting with guys, and we see that she always thinks that they're obsessed with her, and a lot of times are not, and it's just cringy to watch. But there's a specific episode, I think, that Rachel is sort of flirting with the guy who lives, their neighbor, the guy who she calls a Yeti, and then he shaves it all, and he's super handsome, whatever. And she's like, she thinks she has the upper hand, and it's like really cringy because she doesn't, and she's just very unaware of herself, and it's just annoying. And you keep noticing Monica reacting to this. Like, she notices this, and she's also like, "Ooh, what are you doing?" But she never says anything. She never does anything about it. And that's just so bizarre to me. We see this all the time. Chandler also has a traumatic childhood. He's struggling with the fact that his parents split up, and his dad came out as gay, and he's apparently seen him do sexual activities with other men, and that was very traumatic for him. And he's developed this sort of like defense mechanism of like comedy. Like, he puts up this comedic front and like ignores everything else, and he mentions this a bunch of times. Like, it's almost a cry for help. And we see other characters notice it and react to it, and like their facial expressions, we can see it, but no one ever says anything or does anything about it. And to a point where it's just like, is this friendship really that sweet, or is it just like codependency? I feel like it seems very toxic to me. And you're gonna call me oversensitive. I can deal with that. I actually searched a little bit about the issues that I noticed this time around when I was watching Friends, and I Googled a bit, and I saw a few articles on it, a lot actually, and I found a few YouTube videos on it, and a lot of the comments, the majority of the comments were like, this generation is just too sensitive, and like, whatever, like, this is supposed to be a blissful show. I get that. It's just, it's too blissful for me to a point where it's like, yeah, maybe I'm too sensitive, but maybe you're just not sensitive enough. Like, I don't know. It's just not my cup of tea, and that's what I'm discussing, so I don't really mind people thinking I'm too sensitive. Anyways, so yeah, all these characters have these weird traits that need to be resolved and like worked through on therapy, in my opinion, but we only see other people reacting to it, and nothing ever gets resolved, which I think is really weird. So back on the whole no real challenges thing, the show is like allergic to challenges, to any sort of challenge, whether it's a financial thing or whatever it is. We never see people working through anything, and it has like continuity errors because of this. Like, they're so allergic to not resolving anything that there's like this one episode, and this is like a simple example of it, but there's this one episode where Monica is sick. It's like a subplot of the episode where Monica's sick, and Rachel's sister Reese Witherspoon is in town, and she's flirting with Ross, whatever, these two plots. And then Monica's sick, and the environment is that Monica and Chandler, who's also about to get sick, are in the room, are in their room, and Rachel is in the apartment. And we go to the next episode, like, it cuts off, and we go to the next episode, and in the beginning of the next episode, Monica and Chandler are coming out of the room, and even though Monica was super sick all throughout the last episode, they completely phased that out. Like, you don't actually see her being sick for the rest of the episode, although it's like, it's supposed to be the next, like, minute, but we just, like, it's like, they just don't want to face conflict to a point where they like phase out like catching a cold. Like that's how far they're gonna go. So the no real challenges thing is a real issue for me. I wanna sit back and enjoy myself for 20 minutes and not have to think about real life problems, but I still want to feel like it's just surreal. Like it's like a Dr. Seuss thing. Like it's just so we have these characters who are supposed to be living a normal life, but it's they never face any conflict, and any conflict that they do face is resolved immediately. Like when Phoebe meets characters from her past that have traumatic, um, power to them, it's just resolved in 10 minutes, like every single time. We never actually see anything like that happen, like get resolved properly. So another thing I dislike is just like the character development in general. There is no real character arc. Let's be serious here. There's no real character arc to anyone on this show, which is really annoying. For 10 seasons, someone could get better, but they don't. No one is ever improving. Everyone's just like sort of like laughing at each other's like traumas, thinking it's quirk, but it's not. Like your trauma should not be your main character trait, but that's the way the show goes. And so the characters, my two least favorite characters, Phoebe and Joey. Joey, I hate because his entire character is just being stupid, and it's just not funny. Like it's like he's like a cartoon character. Like he's just that dumb. And that's what I mean by saying that the friendship is toxic, because we constantly see other characters making fun of him or like being like duh, and he's just there being super stupid, and there's really no character to him. He's just stupid and good with women. That's it. That's the entire character. Something I noticed about the show this time around almost immediately that like made it unbearable for me was the homophobia. And I know there's probably going to be two arguments about this. One is that, the times have changed, like no one was so sensitive at the time, we could joke about these things. And the second one being that comedy shouldn't have these sort of like regulations and like sensitivities. To answer the first one, first of all, I hate that argument. The fact that people say that like at the time it was okay. No, it wasn't. No, homophobia is never okay. Like I'm pretty sure it was never okay. And the thing is, you can just not bring it up. Like a gigantic red flag of the show that's been talked about recently is how non-racially diverse it is. Like throughout 10 seasons, there's like one black person in the entire show, and like no other race ever. But I think there's a woman who's Asian, who's like Ross's girlfriend. When he goes to China, he meets her, and the joke there is that they like come back to New York, and Rachel goes and says, "Hi, welcome to America," like in a really stupid way, and she's like, "I'm from New York," and it's just haha, that's really funny. So that's the thing. I think the producers actually reacted to it being so non-diverse last year and like apologized for it or something. I hate that it's just so unrealistically not diverse, but at least they don't make racist jokes. The thing is, you could just not talk about the LGBTQ plus community at all, yet you choose to talk about it and use it as the butt of a joke. You make jokes at the expense of this community, and it's just so sad. Like it's just not even that funny. I think my cat is coughing. So that's what I have to say. Like if you have the argument of like at the time it was okay to make the joke, at the time it was never okay to make the joke. You could have just ignored it. I read this like line in one of the articles, which was like, bad representation is worse than no representation at all. I agree with that. Like, just don't bring it up. Like, it's never fine to joke about these things. Anyways, and on the second argument, which is like, yeah, comedy shouldn't have to like abide by these rules. I guess personally, I could agree sometimes, but as long as it's funny. Like, I think that's the main thing for me. Sure, comedy can joke about sensitive subjects, but if it's funny, it's just not that funny. There's just like random one-liners, and to think and this is what I was thinking when I was watching the show. Like, imagine the number of people in the cast and crew and the live audience who were going through these questions, these identity questions, these sexuality questions at the time, and they're like sitting there filming this, and they're just, how offensive, how like, how insensitive is that? To write a joke that's not even funny, and write that into the show. So I think my main thing is, like, I get it, comedy is subjective. This is just not funny. A lot of the humor is like it's written by or for 12-year-olds, and it's one-liners that you can repeat without context, and it just makes the most simple humor ever. I like my comedy to be a bit more complex, have like context, whatever. That's the thing too. None of the show, like none of the jokes have anything to do with the time they were filmed, like the time the show was filmed or like is supposed to be filmed. And it's like throughout 10 seasons, the only time you actually notice like what year it is that there's like a New Year's episode and they say the year. Like, that's about it. There are no topical or relevant jokes, which I think is just cheap humor, honestly. Like, I think it's really funny to be able to talk about what's happening right now, and they just ignore it. So I guess like a good side to that would be that it's timeless, and it's probably why so many people from different generations like obsess over Friends, because you can watch it at any time. But still, I don't like it. I think it's too dumbed down. I think generally speaking, the writers assumed that we were very, very stupid, and that is a good transition into my next issue, which is fat phobia. Oh my god. The amount of one-liners and like cheap shots at someone just being a little bit heavier is just absurd. Like, and maybe people were just like that simple, because there are scenes where they like flash back into their youth, and you see Monica, who used to be heavier, and by the way, that's her entire character. Like, before she was an adult, now she's obsessive or whatever, but her entire character trait was just being heavy. So there are scenes where they cut into like a flashback, and they haven't started talking yet or doing anything really, but she's just sitting there in like a fat suit, and you can hear the audience start laughing, and you're like, what are you laughing at? Is it really that simple to make people laugh? So to those who say that the times were different and you could make jokes at the time, maybe people were different in a sense where it was just easier to amuse and entertain them, because in no context could you just show me a picture of someone being chubby and that's enough to make me laugh. It's just lame. I just think it's really, really not cool. Finally, something that really stood out to me, and this might be just a me thing, but Chandler's actor was obviously going through struggles with addiction in real life, and I think that he wrote a book and like published a book last year talking about this, and I don't know if that's the first time he mentioned it or whatever, but it's like very obvious, like it's very visible. And it's really sad, because it just seems very inhumane, because you're like, this show isn't worth it. Like, nothing's worth it. If someone is struggling with something as serious as that, is it really worth it to put them in that stressful situation? And like, it's just completely brushed over. Like, it's ignored, obviously. It's terrible. It's terrifying to look at. And it just breaks my heart thinking what that actor is going through when he's filming these like one-liners that aren't even that funny. And I'm sure a ton of actors and just cast and crew members go through different situations in their life. They might have issues with their body image or whatever, and we don't even see that. Or they might have anxiety or depression or whatever, and we're not even seeing that. It's not that visible, but because this addiction is so like visible, like you can see it physically, you can see it on him, it's just heartbreaking to me. I don't think anyone should be put through anything like that. I think it's just inhumane, but because you can see it, it just breaks my heart so much. And I kept thinking about the actor going through these scenes and like what's going on with him. It was terrible. That was very painful for me to watch. Yeah, so all in all, I think the show is just very dumbed down. The characters, no one has an arc. No, we never see any character development. We never see anyone improve whatsoever in the course of 10 seasons. Rachel's still the same narcissist she was when she started. Phoebe's still going through the same trauma and like PTSD that she had when we started. Ross obviously has some anger issues that we like sort of like talk about even in one episode or like a few episodes, but it's like really smoothed over very quickly. Monica has obsessive tendencies and body issues, and we like go over that. Chandler has a defense mechanism, like a humor as a defense mechanism sort of thing, because he's not over the trauma caused by his parents splitting up and all that, and we just go over it. It's just not funny. I think that's the end of that. Like it's just not worth it. A lot of the insensitivities aren't worth it because it's not funny. And it's very non-diverse, which makes it way more unrealistic. I don't care if we never see them go to work and afford an apartment in New York. Like that's not the most unrealistic thing about this show at all. There's a shit ton of unrealistic things about it. And that's why I really disliked rewatching Friends, and I'm never gonna do that again. And yeah, I think I got a bit of that out. I needed to let go of all that. So next week I'm probably gonna do a video on why I hated the finale to How I Met Your Mother. Peace.